Good morning, all. Thank you for joining us this morning for the Integra Masterclass on Business Process Reviews. This presentation is an encore presentation from our roadshow this year, and it is led by Peter Wilson. Just as a reminder, please make sure your phones are on mute when you join this conference. We will have a short Q&A session at the end. Please use the chat function in order to submit your questions. At this time, I'm going to hand over the presentation to Peter Wilson to start.
Okay, good morning, everybody. As Mel said, my name's Peter Wilson. I'm the lead consultant in the UK for Integra. Just trying to get the screens to work. There we go. Just making sure. So I'm going to go back now, just checking that was working. Okay, so what I was asked to do at the user group was to go through common items that come up in business process reviews. So for those of you who don't know, we offer a business process review service to clients. This involves effectively one of our senior consultants coming out to yourselves, going through either your entire Integra system or potentially just one area, like purchase to pay or sales to cash, having a look at how you use the system, what issues you've got, how the system interacts with other systems, so mainly interfaces, copy and paste data in, extracting data out again, and then come up with some recommendations as to how you can run those processes more efficiently and get more use out of Integra to minimise the effort required of everybody. So obviously the individual details of anybody's report are specific to them, but there are some general themes that tend to come up. So I've listed out 5 of these that I'm going to go through now. Obviously there are only 5 common examples. A normal report would go through much more detail for your individual situation. So first item that commonly comes up is user maintenance. So I don't know everybody's individual situations, but the main issue with user maintenance are there's a large number of screens to set up. That normally means you have to have some kind of checklist where you go through and make sure when you create a new user, you've done all the setup you need to. And that process in itself is quite time consuming. So by a large number of screens, that can be maybe 20, 30 screens potentially, worst case scenario. Because you would have to create user in the login database. You normally have to set up various security rules. You need to create 1 or 2 requisitioners. You need to put the user into various authorization hierarchies. You potentially need to create suppliers or customers. If you're using employee expenses, you'll have to create an employee. If you're using purchase card interface, you'll probably have to put them into hierarchy and potentially create a card
conference
as well. Oh, somebody else has just joined us, so welcome, whoever that was. So there's a large number of screens to set up. Commonly, our solution to that would be to use the Authorized Signatory Database, or ASD, linking that to Dynamic Record Manager, or DRM. So ASD is basically a single set of screens where you can collect all the data relating to a user. So you can create their name, address, their payroll number, who their manager is.
Has joined the conference.
Which authorizations hierarchies they belong to, which codes they can access, all those kind of things.
Has joined the conference.
In the set of screens. There's a lot of people joining late here. And DRM then takes that information from
the conference.
Takes that information from ASD and then
joined the conference.
This is really annoying. Create the records from that. So, an example, we have a number of clients, and this may well resonate with what you need to do. So as I said slightly earlier, you need to create the user in the login database. You then have to go into the security group screen and add the user to whichever security groups they belong to. You will commonly have specific field level security for requisitioner codes or login IDs, those kind of things. You'll probably create a requisitioner code so they can order stuff in RSS. Depending on your configuration, you may require to set up a second requisitioner code for authorization. You'll probably need to link that user to requisition points.
Has joined the conference.
add the user to the invoice approval hierarchy, the sales ledger authorization hierarchy, the nominal ledger hierarchy for budgets and journals, and potentially other things as well. So it takes a reasonable amount of time to go through all those screens, and obviously get interrupted halfway through, which is why you have a checklist, so you can check what you have done and what you haven't done. So, lost control there briefly, and then I got it back again too quickly, so let me go back.
Please remind everyone to mute your lines.
Okay, thanks, Mel. So, at a particular client, this process used to take about an hour and a half to go through and set all those records. That process now takes about 15 minutes because they do all the setup on a single screen. So obviously a significant saving every time you need to create or amend a user, you're saving a fair amount of time. So that's one example. Next example is invoice processing. So in issues with invoice processing, you have a large volume of paper, so the paper invoices arrive as pieces of paper, or potentially, now I did say this mockingly at the user groups, but it turns out a lot of people actually do this. You get the invoices emailed to you, but quite a number of people then print those out so they can then scan them through the normal process. So you get a large volume of paper to handle, you have to print in barcodes, scanning then becomes a separate process, so obviously there's an automatic delay sent in there. So
has joined the conference.
If you're asking people to authorize stuff, you have to wait till the image has been received.
Nixon
has joined the conference.
It also relies on manual checking of the data, checking the bank details, those kinds of things.
Has joined the conference.
Thank you. Okay, so sorry for the interruption there. So the process, time-consuming, handle lots of bit of paper, manual checking. So what we would normally recommend is you ask your suppliers to email in PDF invoices, ideally with metadata. We then use a tool called EMR, which is the email reader, that will monitor that email address looking for specific things. It will then remove the PDF attachments and store them in the Integra report file server, or RFS, and then we'll use IDM to process those invoices. IDM is the successor to OCR, although in this case it
has joined the conference.
In this case, it uses the metadata in the PDF to get the data rather than OCR, although it will revert to OCR technology if there is no metadata. So I'm going to try and move screens. Nope, still not working. Mel, can you move to the next screen for me, please? Thank you. So in the old process, at this particular client, invoice received in paper format, or when they were emailed in, they weren't actually printed out, so they can follow a standard process for everything. They then manually registered the invoices from the pieces of paper, a barcode printed out through the little Zebra barcode printer. They stuck that onto the document, put them in a separate pile. That pile was then periodically throughout the day, I think they did it twice a day, once at lunchtime, once at the end of the day. They took the invoices to the bulk scanner, put them in the bulk scanner, scanned them, the system read the barcodes, and then cross-referenced the data. What they do now, sorry Mel, if you can hit the next screen, thank you. So the client now receives PDF emails from about 20 suppliers. The focus was on high volume suppliers. Rather than trying to hit every supplier, they just picked the top 20. The idea being do sort of 10 or 20 to start with, and then just gradually add more as you become comfortable with the process. So the email reader picks up those emails, takes the PDF attachment, stores it into Integra in the report file server. The user then runs the equivalent of the OCR scanning. So they go into the screen, the files are automatically loaded onto that screen. They then just hit save. Those scanned images are compared to templates and the bank details are checked against the supplier record on Integra. If there are any issues, so if the bank details on the document don't agree to the bank details against the supplier, or the only other thing that's commonly checked is net plus VAT equals gross. If any of those don't agree, then they appear in a list of items awaiting review. But the bulk of them, obviously, the details net plus VAT does equal gross. The supplier hasn't changed their bank details. So these just go through and get registered on Integra automatically, and the image is attached. So effectively, there's no human intervention required for those ones other than to load the file in the first place. So that process has removed a few thousand invoices in this case from manual handling, so they can just be ignored effectively and they just get processed automatically. So that saved a reasonable amount of time, over a year, and that's with only 20 suppliers. Obviously, if you use more suppliers, potentially you get more savings, but obviously there's a diminishing return. As you move away from the high volume suppliers, you get less return for every individual template you're adding on. Okay, so next example that commonly comes up, forecasting and budgeting, normally done via spreadsheets for people who don't use Integra to do it. So issues with spreadsheets, you can't really see the position because it needs to be consolidated, because normally these spreadsheets are kept by lots of different people across the organisation. So if you want to see what the position is now, you've got to effectively ask people to send in the spreadsheets, add them up, run some kind of macro probably to add them up, and then look at the figures and then work from there. It's also hard to keep track of what you have and haven't done. You need to keep some kind of spreadsheet or checklist that says, for these areas or these cost centres, I've sent them out, I haven't got them back, or I've got back the first draft, haven't got back the second draft, and so on and so on and so on. Reporting is quite complicated because the data is in a spreadsheet. You're trying to aggregate data from spreadsheets and data from Integra potentially to add together, which is quite complicated. And there's obviously no audit process on this other than maybe spreadsheet saying sent file to John, John said it was okay, sent it back and stuff like that. But that's just some record on a diary or notepad or spreadsheet somewhere that you've got. There's no interrogatable bit of information. So what we would normally recommend in this case is use BDM, budget data modeling. So for those of you who don't know, budget data modeling is a module within Integra. It lets you do your budgeting. Sorry, somebody making a lot of noise after they can mute their please. So BDM, it lets you see all the data on system. So the items are set up on system. The users log into the screen, they can see their budget, they can fill in their forecasts, their managers and finance department can see the status of everything. You can run reports using the same hierarchy that you normally use. Those reports can be run effectively at any time you want to. So whenever you want to run the report, you get the current figures, and there's a full audit of any changes. So anybody's updated the forecast or amended the budget, or put some notes in, that's all audited and the information is available to everybody to see. So hopefully I got control, I can move forward here. There we go. So here's an example. Client had a process where finance completed spreadsheets, which is fairly common. So finance filled in the standard spreadsheets. They did the first draft effectively, sent them out to the department managers for the department managers to complete an update. If the director of finance or anybody else wanted to see the current position, those spreadsheets had to all be returned, put into some kind of consolidated spreadsheet, and then there was a macro used to add basically all the sub-spreadsheets up, and each individual finance user, I think there's 3 finance users in this scenario, they kept a spreadsheet of what they had sent out, when they got it back, when they returned it, what they chased, when they chased people, and basically kept track of the story that way. What they do now, they create the initial position on the system. Users are automatically emailed out to tell them to review the details. They log in, either say yes or okay, or amend them as they think appropriate, and then it goes up the authorization hierarchy, finance intervening at various points along the way. Also means that finance can run a report that shows all the amendments that any users made, along with any notes or comments. This was used by the senior accountant. They had to produce a report for the board. So what they did is they wanted to see all the adjustments that were over a certain amount. I think it was £5,000. So any adjustments that adjusted anybody's individual figure by over £5,000 appeared on a standard report. That person can then quickly look through that, see all the things, all the big things that have moved, and then use that to produce a summary for the board report. Also, once that process is complete in BDM, you can just use a single screen to say, take all the data in BDM, and load it into the general ledger as the current forecast. So that's obviously a fairly quick process. So again, it saved time, but the main thing here was just the visibility of the data and the ability to see what's happening and report on it effectively instantaneously, which just wasn't something that they had before, so they found that quite useful. Which is basically what I just said there at the bottom. Okay, so next topic, replacement of paper processes. Now, you're probably aware of this. If you have a paper process, there's no automated workflow. And by paper process, I don't necessarily mean a physical piece of paper. It may be a Word document or something like that that gets emailed around various peoples to do various peoples, that's a strange word, various people to do their parts of the process. But there's no automated workflow. Basically, I fill in the form, email it to my manager might or might not email back, ask me questions. If they authorise it, they then send it to somebody else. But I've got no way of knowing what's happening once my manager has processed it. They've got no way of knowing what's happening either. There's no way for somebody to overlook the whole thing. At the end of the process as well, it requires a manual update. So whatever the end process is, it's a request for a supplier, or a request for annual leave, or I want to buy something, whatever it might be. At the end of that, some kind of manual update is required into a system to say, okay, that's now been processed and authorised, I will now update it. So, as you probably would have guessed, we are suggesting e-forms would be the common solution to this kind of issue. So if you use an e-form, well, if you don't know what an e-form is, I guess an e-form is a tool within Integra where you can create your own set of screens with a workflow process that lets you go through some kind of paper replacement process. It can literally be anything at all. It doesn't have to be related to Integra. It can be. So advantage of user forms, there's full auditing of these. So anybody who starts processing a form, there's a full record of what they filled in, who it was sent to, what they did with it, who it was then sent to, if it went back or forward. All that process is audited. If it's an Integra-related process, at the end, when the form has been completed, we can automatically update that data into Integra to create a journal or set the supplier up or whatever it might be. You can have workflow rules, so you can direct when the first person fills in their part of the form, and then follow some rules to go to work out who the second person is and sends it on to whomever that might be. You can miss stages out, you can have extra stages in different scenarios, those kind of things. And e-forms are available to non-Integra users. So some people, even who have e-forms, aren't aware of this. You don't have to be an Integra user to use an e-form. You can set them up to allow anonymous login, and in that case, the user just puts their email address in when they create the form, so that we can still communicate back with them. So there are lots of examples of these across lots of different sites. So commonly, Integra-related items are things like requests for new suppliers, requests for customers, requests for cost centers, expense codes, requests for payments to be made, user setup, asset disposal, and that's just a sample. Obviously, you can think of pretty much any reference file in Integra. You can create a request for it. Quite a number of transactions you can create requests for as well. For non-Integra stuff, capital funding requests we've seen. So you request capital funding, you put in a business case saying what you want to do, how much it's going to cost, what the benefits are going to be, what the return on investment is going to be, payback period, whatever rules you've got. That goes through some kind of process, and at the end, you then have authority to go and buy that thing or invest that money in whatever it might be. That doesn't necessarily create anything Integra. It may create an asset, it may create a cost centre, but that's kind of incidental to the capital funding. We have internal service requests, so you might be having a meeting. You need some catering for that meeting. You need to contact the catering department and say, we want sandwiches for 6 people and cups of tea and biscuits. That can be done through an e-form, and the whole process is automated. Internal billing, similar kind of process. That would just have some more information about quotes going backwards and forwards. It could be maintenance requests. You could send an email to the works department saying that the lights are going out in your room, or there's some issue with the power, or you need a new laptop, any of those kind of things. So you can use those to replace effectively any paper process. Last one, you'll be glad to hear. Authorization of changes to supplier details. This is a quick and easy one, really. So if you change supplier details, you go to the purchase ledger and just update the supplier details. Or somebody does that and you don't know, and you do a payment run and potentially done it incorrectly, and you end up paying the wrong person. So risks here are you basically pay the wrong payment details. Obviously that's going to be problematic, especially if it's a large amount of money. How are you going to get the money back? That's going to be an issue. Also, there's no audit trail to say who authorised it. There's a trail to say who did the change, but there's no audit trail that said who authorised that. So this is an easy fix. There's basically a parameter in the purchase ledger that requires authorisation of changes to bank details. If you switch that on, and the literally is just a switch it on option, then that creates a separate stage in the process. So if I log into the supplier's record, change the bank details, it effectively sends an email to someone to say, Peter's just went and changed the bank details for the supplier, is that okay? They then go to a screen and view the details that have changed, look at whether backup I've attached to prove the details, and then authorise it. If they don't authorise it, supplier still exists, but they're put on hold, and they will not be paid until such time as the authorisation has been, the change has been authorised, which means there's no risk of you paying the incorrect details. So that authorisation is done on system, and the details therefore are audited. Don't have specific examples. We've got lots of clients that have switched this on. It was just something that came out fairly recently, and by fairly recent I mean probably a couple of years ago. And a number of people seem to be unaware of this issue and just weren't using it. So it's just a quick, easy win, basically. So, conclusion, business process reviews. There's normally a number, I don't think we've been yet to a client and done a business process review and haven't been able to suggest something that would make their processes simpler or easier, or give them some food for thought at least. So I would kind of recommend you look at doing that. Certainly we're happy to come out and visit and go through whatever we suggested we come up with. Normal process is, depending on the amount of assisting you want us to look at, it's sort of 3 to 5 days in total from our point of view. A couple of those would be, or a few of those would be on site, depending on how long it was. And then there's a report produced which we'll agree with you, and then we would potentially present that review back to you with the various recommendations with what changes you
joined the conference.
Oh, somebody just joined right at the end there. Okay, so as I said, these are just some examples. We found you've all made significant investments in Integra. You want to maximise that investment. Now, that's whether you're using Integra 2, whether you're using client server, whether you're using Centros. You still made an investment. These reviews will potentially cover any configuration you've got. So we can take a review of how you use Integra, the surrounding processes, and then create a customised set of recommendations rather than just these generic ones, along with the expected benefits you would get out of that, of using the best practice and effective processes. If anybody is interested in looking at a business process review, basically your account manager is the person to speak to. So that's either Andy Wood or Chris Fletcher, depending on which type of organisation you are, but I presume you all know who your account managers are. So that's it from me. So thank you for listening. If there are any questions, I believe there are, you have the ability to submit questions via this screen. So I will stay on and have a look and see if there have been any Q&A questions. But if there are, I'll have a go at doing this. If not, again, thank you for your time, and please contact your account manager if you want to participate in a business process review. Thank you.
Adrian Laybourne
has left the conference.
Highlands Council
Has left the conference.
Oh, so we have one question. Let's see if I can see the details on it.
Has left the conference.
I can't see it. Often having access to web-based applications by non-log. Is there any other system used to access and use eForm, for example, if you're a supplier? I suppose no is technically the answer, but if you are, in order to access Integra, you're going to need access realistically to your intranet. People, generally speaking, will only host Integra on their intranet. So they're asking here that this question is a supplier. Supplier is very unlikely to be able to access an eForm because they have to be able to connect to your network first, unless you host Integra in DMZ, which is very, very unlikely. So I think the answer is probably no. They need access to the network is the other requirement. Somebody else then says, what do you mean, same person actually, what do you mean by anonymous login? A login we administrators have set up and provided. Yes, effectively if you go into the eForm designer, there's a user you need to set up called, I think it's eForm user or eForm guest user. You need to take that and give them access to the form. Then when someone accesses that form, they'll effectively log in as that user. They'll only be able to see that form, and when they use it, it will ask for an email address so it can communicate with them.